So I have a question for you. Was life better before we had the internet and cell phones? The question has people divided. Some say life was better when we didn't know everything and had the luxury of boredom. But a lot of people credit the internet for keeping us aware and informed. So what do you all think, DBL Nation? Was life better before the internet and phones? Go to dblvote.com to weigh in. What would you say, Jeff?
I think there's good and bad to everything. It's not black and white. You know, I think I do miss not looking at my phone and have people look at their phone so much. My children look at their phone. For information purposes, there's a lot of misinformation out there that is dividing the internet. We don't even have our facts straight anymore. So it's gotten to a point where it's gotten way too far. But for me, it's great on some things, right? You could connect easier. Al made some good points about FaceTime with your family.
Right.
So for those reasons, I like it.
I mean, for the communication alone,
yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal for people that all kind of live out of state from our loved ones, and especially my girlfriend's in Uruguay right now. Like, it's great for communication. My kids are out of state. But, you know, Sam, you said something interesting when you said keeping people informed with the facts. But I think the problem is that we are all probably skilled in one or two things. So any kind of facts we get, we don't really have a body of knowledge to incorporate them in. And I think we saw that with COVID, where everybody was, you know, a microbiologist. I worked in medical labs for years. That's how I made my living. I worked around people with PhDs, and these are people with a specific knowledge of one corner of this tiny industry.
Right.
But now your uncle thinks that he knows everything, and he doesn't. No different than I don't know anything about how a combustible engine works. But the thing is, everybody thinks they know everything, and that can be weaponized against them.
Yeah, I kind of just picture if someone like in the 80s was like, here's a magic wish. You can know everything in the whole wide world in your pocket. I'd be like, that's amazing. And then you can also know everything wrong about that information. All of that information could be totally switched, and it can be used for evil, which it is. It's clearly being used in Ukraine. It's clearly being used in Israeli and Hamas as propaganda. So I agree with you that the misinformation is almost more effective now than the reason for having that information. Secondly, I also have to say, when I was bored as a kid, I was really creative. I was imaginative. I came up with scenarios, probably for a little too long. When I was 16, I was still doing it. But when you don't have time to be creative because you're getting likes or dislikes, the brain dies in that way.
Yeah,
You
I
know
think
what I mean?
for kids especially. But I will say, you know, the flip side, even though I agree with all three of your points, you know how
There's definitely a flip side.
There is a flip side, and I've always said that we do need the internet to be more regulated. I know that can be a slippery slope, but at this point, in my opinion, too many teens are attempting suicide because of their addiction, their depression, or online bullying. But to be aware of what's happening in certain countries that we weren't aware of before, I think is vital, and I think it's life-saving. So yes, you have to use discernment. There's too much tribalism, unfortunately. Too many people just like glob onto one side without really unpacking it and listening. And I think hopefully within time, because I don't want that information to go away. Would we know what the people in Gaza are going through right now? Would we know what the people that have hostages still being held hostage in Gaza are going through right now, those parents? So I think it's important to know these things. It's just we got to figure out a way to get rid of that disinformation and that misinformation. But then again, people are going to say that's an infringement on my freedom of speech.
And also your ability to indoctrinate yourself in that, because you should be aware of what's going on in Gaza, but should it take over your life? And I think whatever it is, whatever the issue is, it can be, hey, I'm informed about, you know, a gambling probe in the NFL. But when it becomes this thing where that's your identity, where you're not looking at your kids because you're focused on this celebrity and did Jada Pinkett do Will Smith wrong? You're commenting on blogs. It takes away from real life. And I just want to tell, I've said it before, I've been with people when they've passed from this earth, and that's why I don't care about the internet. It's not real. At the end of your life, when 6 people pick up your caskets, those are the people that mattered. All the other likes and everything, that's why I'm not on social media. I don't care. I'm sorry. I've seen what's real. And I just hope people don't waste their life and realize when they're 85, like, oh, I don't have friends. You got 1 or 2 people that you can call when it gets really dark, and all the rest of the people are just fodder. So no shade, but it's not real.
Well said.